This is a different video than what you should be expecting, mostly because this is the alt channel. My name's DJ Cereal Sauce, this is my alt channel, and today I'm going to be breaking down how I made one of my favorite beats to date, Hand of the Dealer. Yeah, let's just jump right into it. Take this fucking face cam off of me. Okay, so it all started with a guitar sample that my good buddy Peter sent me. I can't fucking find it, so we're just gonna pretend that it's this one. Okay, so as it turns out, I asked Peter where the hell the message was that where he sent me these voice recordings, these guitar recordings. He sent it to me over fucking text, so that explains why I couldn't fucking find it. But here's what it actually sounded like when he first gave it to me. Right, it's pretty awesome. Okay. And to me, it kind of sounded like initially that it was in 3/4. So I asked him, I was like, Peter, did you write this in 3/4? Did you do this in 3/4? And he was like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I was like, it sounds like it's in 3/4. And then I just sort of left it at that. So then through doing time stretching and all of that stuff, I ended up turning the melody into this arrangement so that I could kind of clean it up and time sync it properly and make it sound like it's a little bit more cohesive. Because fun fact, at this time, Peter was not playing with a metronome. I don't know why he wasn't doing that, but we ended up turning it into this. And that's the whole thing. It sounds kind of Western in a weird way. So the first thing I did was I took this while I was at work and I ended up just trying to figure out roughly what notes he was playing, what bass notes he was playing and all that stuff. I think I even pitched it down a little bit because he plays guitar a little bit higher up than where I personally prefer to have my guitars sound. Whatever, he gave me the sample, I can do whatever the hell I want with it. Ended up figuring out the notes I wanted to do, ended up figuring out a bass line. And then what I can only describe as the only thing I do with my music of this genre, I decided to then put that on a Rhodes piano because, I don't know, the Rhodes just sounds nice. I mean, are you kidding me? So I did that. Also, this is what I ended up doing with the guitar. Put this whole just smattering of effects on it. So it sounds like this now. It sounds a little bit warbly in a weird sense. I also did some reversing for the intro, but more importantly than that, most of the smattering of effects are actually right here at the beginning so that it sounds a little bit funky. Put all these weird effects on it, putting EQs to just, absolutely destroy the shape of the sound, putting Echo Boy on it, putting RC20 on it to give it a vinyl feeling. I don't know where my RC20 went. All that stuff. And this is what it ends up sounding like now. With some vinyl effects. So I did that. Additionally, because of the whole 3/4 thing that I was talking about, what he actually sent me was in 4/4. So instead of doing like instead of doing that, I instead decided to make it a much faster 160 BPM because the only way that I can seem to make music in 3/4 is by making it really fast so that every quarter note is happening in rapid succession. So this is what it sounds like in the 3/4 rhythm context. I think mostly what it was that confused me as to this being a 3/4 thing was that he was just playing primarily in triplets, but I figured this is the best time for me to experiment and try and make something in 3/4 with guitar that sounded vaguely like it was in 3/4, and that also gave me the challenges of trying to figure out how to do melodies and a bunch of other things. So that was the initial challenge that I had to deal with. Second challenge was trying to figure out the chords and then ended up just turning them into these. Absolutely incredible. Putting down a very simple bass line to go alongside it. Very simple, nothing too crazy. I eventually tried incorporating some triplet rhythms in the percussion here at the beginning. It's kind of subtle, but with the whole arrangement, it's pretty nice. It's just to kind of give people that 3/4 vibe. And then a 3/4 time, what is this, a tom? With some funky panning. Turn that off, that's my producer tag. So that's that. That's how I did that. The drums, they aren't anything too crazy. It's just, again, following a 3/4 rhythm with an occasional open hat on the downbeat, just to help kind of maintain a sort of head nod. So that was how I chose to handle that. I'm in this weird phase right now where I'm just not putting drums on anything. I think it was like I went from doing crazy breakcore shit on Breaking the Fourth Wall, and then I toned it down with stuff like this, where the drums were fairly simple. Even if there was like a lot of drums in, say, the song that I had made prior to this one, I was slowly reeling back all the drums until I inevitably just fucking removed them on this big project that I'm working on. But that's how the majority of the intro is going to look. I didn't do anything too crazy with any of the effects on any of these things. So the drums, I just put compressors on them just to make them sound a little bit more cohesive. For the guitar, we did everything that we did here. For the chords, we don't do a whole lot except EQing out. What are we EQing out? Mostly EQing out the lows, because it kind of clashes with the bass sometimes. And I know what you're saying. How about you just remove those bass frequencies? No. So even though this is actually fairly non-audible in the grand scheme of things relative to everything happening up here, but just to be safe, it's just a good habit, at least for the way that I like to mix, is I'm just like, let me just put an EQ on it. That way it's not interfering with the bass, because the bass is obviously very bassy. I know, very scientific. But everything that comes after this, a lot of this is actually stuff that I've either taken inspiration from my own previous music, or I've taken inspiration from other producers that have done similar things. Since I had never made music in 3/4 before, my only reference was actually this video by Servita of him making compound time R&B, sort of. And so a very interesting that thing that he did in his music, it was kind of sexy when he did it, and it's not equally as sexy when I do it. It sounds pretty good, though, is he would add these weird, like, guitar stabs. Bit more. And so I decided that I wanted to replicate that with my own. So if we just isolate the drums here for a second. So I think all I did is I just followed very basic triad versions of these, whereas these are slightly more extended seventh chords primarily. I instead just took like the roots and the thirds and the fifths to make it sound like this. And it sounds pretty cool within that context, but then in the context of the whole thing, it actually sounds pretty cool. Just a nice little... Get out of here. It doesn't, it's not really taking away from this guitar, because it's very stab-y. It's not very, it shows up for a moment and then very quickly fades out, whereas this guitar is very constantly happening. It's constantly chugging forward with a constant rhythm. So that was the inspiration that I took there. And then additional inspiration that I took is I was doing a commission for my good buddy Varian. He wanted me to turn lutes into lo-fi because he's an asshole. And so in that song that I was making, I learned how to use the lute. And then in a different song that I was making, I used the lutes to make a very interesting arpeggio texture. I just like throwing arps into stuff because it kind of helps fill out the sonic space a little bit and doesn't really require me to do anything because I'm lazy. But this is what that sounds like. I did that, but then the cooler thing that I did is, because this is an incredibly consistent rhythm, I learned this other trick a long time ago where I took the arp, I reversed it, or no, I reversed it in the piano roll with Alt-Y, and then I reversed that audio effect so you get this. So what it does is it kind of has like the tail end of the arpeggio. It kind of has like the tail end of the sound that's being played, and it almost is kind of leading into the note, but the note doesn't have a strong transient hit. So this is kind of how it sounds going into itself. So that's really cool. It's it's kind of ghostly sounding, and I don't even remember why I came to the conclusion to do that. I think it's because I'm kind of obsessed with like doing weird things with little reverses. Like there's a reverse here, and then I have the regular guitar happening here that goes into a reverse. And then here it's like, oh, here's my arpeggio. And then here's my reverse arpeggio, because why? It sounds cool as hell is why. Yeah, that's maybe one of my favorite techniques to utilize when I do get to utilize it, even if it doesn't come up super frequently. And then one of the last things to talk about here is this lead right here. So with the lead, Peter gave me another voice note that he wanted me to use. Again, I don't know where they went. I'm not convinced that I clearly the recollection that I had from clearly I didn't just pull this out of my ass because I don't know how to play guitar, right? But he then did some miscellaneous little humming. He was like, hold on, wait, he was like, let me cook here. So he hummed another top line. This is the other thing that he sent me. He did send it over text, so I'm just stupid. And I ended up turning it into this with this really slidey synth here. This is what it sounds like. This is the top line that he gave me. And what I did is, I think it was just this for a while, and then I liked having this transition go back up to the E, and then I had another version of it that was a little bit different, and then I was like, wait, hold on, these notes could be different here. So I ended up making basically 3 variations out of the one thing or I made 2 additional variations on top of the main thing that he gave me. And it adds a little bit of interesting texture. I just love how it leads into right here. It's really cool because it has a little bit of ebb and flow to it, where like when the guitar goes away, a part of that rhythm goes away. When the piano goes away, it's a lot quieter in a sense. Like, okay, this is a bad example, but like right here, when it's just the guitar. My little reverse drum fill. That was that. Yeah, one of my favorite things to do when I'm making music like this is if I'm gonna have a hi-hat, I like to just remove that in certain places because then it really just kind of, it rides really smooth. But then of course, right back into the fray. I think that should be everything. Let me do a double check. I will also say I probably will be doing some more background behind the scenes stuff for my newest album when it releases in like March, if I'm being hopeful. Don't hold your breath, but that's the hope. Where I'll be doing a little bit more background on that. However, since more of you know about my music than ever, if you have any songs that you would like a specific breakdown of, absolutely feel free to pop off in the comments and I will see what I can do. I will admit some of them are not as interesting as others, but that's not the important part. The important part is to show you guys how I make the sauce.